then take from him what suffices you and your children bil ma'ruf, in accordance with that which is reasonable. Take from him, meaning without his permission, that which is sufficient for you and for your children. So he didn't say, don't talk to me and, just deal with it. And you've got enough of a past. You need to go through poverty to do kafara, to expiate for everything you've done in the past. The Prophet ﷺ saw the injustice that was being done to her in that regard and told her, then you can take matters into your own hand. Now, what does that mean for practical purposes? Because bil ma'ruf, that which is reasonable, is, again, very subjective. Okay? And it's intentionally subjective. Because it requires someone who's objective to determine who's being subjective with it. I think I lost you guys. All right. Bil ma'ruf, al-ma'ruf is subjective on purpose. Everyone is going to define reasonable differently. So what happened in the case of Hind? Did she not go to someone who would help her with her situation, who would give her fatwa or judge in her situation, that it was unreasonable the way that her husband was withholding from her, therefore you can take from him? She did. So some of the scholars said that in this situation, a woman should still ask someone, ask a scholar, ask a judge, or whatever it may be, who's in that capacity, whether or not she's justified in that taking. And the Hanbali position, the position of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, is the most lenient in that regard, because he said basically whoever is in that in an identical situation can apply it without that judicial process, if you will. But even then, a person should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not go to extravagance, not exceed the bounds. And some of the scholars, I've seen this within fatwa, obviously, that some of the scholars mention this, or take the Hanbali position in this regard, especially when there is a fear of harm or there is something that could come out of that. So a woman can, in that situation, it's not stealing in that case, if she's in that identical situation. But then, of course, a person should exercise as much prudence, as much taqwa as possible in that case. And it's better at the end of the day if someone else could be asked what is reasonable, what's not, if someone who's objective in that regard is consulted. So that's how the scholars dealt with the issue of provision. Housing, bil ma'ruf, the right to a second, the right to a house. The famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Ya ma'ashar al-shabab, O young man, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj, whoever amongst you can afford to do so, let him get married. The technical definition of what the means are, whoever has the means to get married, is, according to Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah, the ability to provide a individual or a private home or living arrangement, as well as provide reasonably in food and in clothing. That's how they defined it from a technical perspective. So what does that mean in regards to other people living within the home? It is the right of a woman to ask for her own private living arrangement. That's a right. So anything that would go beyond that, I know that there are sometimes difficult situations that come up, that should be done in consultation with her, and it should not be forced upon her. She should have the right to ask for that private living arrangement, or not be in that private living arrangement. Obviously, there are times where you have elderly parents, or there are times where someone has to be to live there for some sort of extraneous situations. But in that case, it's still her haqq. So she's showing ihsan, she's showing excellence if she does tanazul, if she withdraws from that particular right. The right to intimacy, as the scholars mentioned. Now I know that that's something that typically, and I'll get to the men, typically when we think about intimacy, we think about it as the right of men, not the right of women. But the scholars from the Salaf, even from the pious predecessors, spoke